Greetings, brothers and sisters. Tonight, September 8th, 2024, it's 5:08 p.m. This is UNIA-ACL Division 421 Atlanta mass meeting. Tonight, we are continuing our chapter UNIA versus the USA as documented in the text Race First by Dr. Tony Martin. As we officially open up our meeting, we'll go through our opening proceedings. First and foremost is our pledge to UNIA flag. We'll do call and response. If you would, please come off mute, repeat after me. I commit my body, mind, and spirit.
I commit my body, mind, and spirit
to the protection, defense, and security
to the protection, defense, and security
of the red, black, and green.
of the red, black, and green.
I dedicate my life.
I dedicate my life
to the redemption of Mother Africa
to the redemption of Mother Africa
and the liberation of her scattered black children.
and the liberation of her scattered black children.
I accept for myself and my descendants
I accept for myself
the teachings of universal African nationalism.
the teachings of universal
African.
And I promise that our children will be instilled
and I promise that our children will be instilled
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as
African people.
In order that the cause of our struggle
in order that the cause of our struggle
will neither falter nor fail.
will neither falter nor fail
Until all black people are free and
united
through one God,
one God,
One aim,
one aim,
and one destiny.
one destiny.
one destiny.
Race First family. You may be
Race First.
you can mute your lines. See if I can do this. Make sure. Okay. A couple rituals that Mr. Garvey instructs us to proceed through. Give me 1 second. I don't know if I can. I probably can't, but if you would, please bear with me. First ritual is our opening from Greenland's icy mountains, and I know I'm not sharing that portion, but from Greenland's icy mountains, from India's coral strand, where Africa's sunny fountains roll down their golden sand, from many ancient rivers, from many palmy plains, they call us to deliver their land from error's chain. Shall we, whose souls are lighted with wisdom from on high, shall we to men be knighted, the lamp of life deny, salvation, O salvation, the joyful sound proclaim, to earth's remotest nation has learned Messiah's name. Waft, waft, ye winds, his story, and you, ye waters, roll, to like a sea of glory, it spreads from pole to pole. To o'er our ransomed nation, the Lamb for sinners slain, Redeemer, King, Creator, in bliss returns to reign. That's our first hymn. Then we follow that with a prayer. I will lead that for office of our chaplain. Almighty God, whose kingdom is everlasting and power infinite, be gracious unto the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and so rule the hearts of thy servants, the President General, and the members of the High Executive Council, and others in authority, that they, knowing the great responsibilities of their office, may above all things seek the honor and welfare of this race, and grant that all our people, considering the authority they bear, may faithfully and obediently honor them in accordance with our laws through Jesus Christ our Lord, who with thee and the Holy Ghost liveth and reigneth forever, one world without end. Amen. And we close out with our final opening hymn is Shine On Eternal Light. Shine on, eternal light, to greet our souls this day. dispel the gloominess of night, and drive our doubts away. Our longing I prepare when war and strife shall cease, to view the morn soon to appear, the new era of peace. Thy glorious church, O God, no kingdom can remove, made without hands, this blessed abode, the harbinger of love. Of all thy gifts that flow from thy heart throne above, from thy great throne above, we ask thee on our hearts bestow the gift of perfect love. My soul the light receives and dares the truth to prove, not blind ignorance believes, but knows that God is love. Come, love, and give new birth to man's destructive mind. Spread where confusion reigns on earth, goodwill to all mankind. Shine on, eternal light, thy penetrating ray shall turn the hour of darkest night into eternal day. Amen. Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll jump into our roll call. Let me switch over my screen share. We'll jump over to our roll call. This is new. Well, it's not new, but doing it this way would be new. Give me a second. I'm trying to do some stuff in the background with the is our lady president present? So you have myself, Brother John, lady president, probably be joining us shortly. I don't see her name. We have our treasurer, President Ross Marvin, is here. Serving as General Secretary is also our lady president. Our first vice president, Brother Macius, is present. Second vice president, Brother Malik, is present. Third vice president, Brother Eric, is present as well. First lady vice president, Sister Diane. Greetings, lady president. Sister Diane, greetings. Second lady president, Sister Cecily, and third lady president, Sister Dr. Kuda. I don't see here Dr. Kuda. Oh, I just messed up my list. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right.
Greetings all.
Greetings. And Attorney Imhotep is also here representing our Legal Defense Committee and Counsel General. I think that is all of our officers. Yes. In addition to our officers, we have, I didn't mention Brother Art, sorry, Recording Secretary. In addition to our officers, we have Brother Brian. We have Dr. Shams calling from New York. We have, that looks like Sister Diane, Sister Jana, Sister Rosa, Sister Shan, and Brother Stephen, for a total of, I believe, 18, probably 17 or 18. So greetings, brothers and sisters, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Ground rules. Please keep your lines muted during presentations or when other people are speaking. Please take notes. And when it is your opportunity to speak, you can share what you have. Please keep your comments limited to about 3 minutes, and so we can allow everyone to share. Sisters, don't give out your personal information. We prefer you give out a business line or email. Please do not use the N-word, and just other than that, make yourself comfortable, and you are amongst family. So preamble would be next. Next of our introductory, and then Brother Art, I'll be calling on you for minutes from previous meeting. Preamble of the Universal Negro Improvement Association Constitution states that the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world, and the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that the strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man. But with love, faith, and charity towards all, The reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and generations of men shall be called blessed. Officers, as we've said before, we want to try to commit the preamble to memory, as well as the pledge to the flag. With that, Brother Art, our recording secretary, would you have minutes from our previous meeting? I believe, I don't know when that was. So was it August 28th? Brother Art, you're on mute if you say anything. August 25th.
August 25th. Thank you. I had trouble getting off mute. Call to order. It was 5 o'clock. We opened with the pledge. And then the rituals were read. Then the preamble was read at 5:22. The last meeting minutes were read. That was at 5:23. Reports on Garvey Day and the convention. Garvey Day was a success. Malik got a shout out for a job well done for his work. Brother Omasis got a shout out for his work. Also, Brother Uri, Diane, Roz, ex-President Roz, First Lady President Ra Ebony, and estimate of new members was a count of 15. The topic read from the first chapter was, the reading was Race First, chapter 9. President John read the chapter. The time at 6:50. Part 1 ended with questions requested. Several members spoke on the fear, the USA fear of Garvey's, and questions about the monies came up. Officers by President. Well, President John mentioned the executive meeting on 9/7. That was at 17. Tuesday's study classes left 3 left. That excuse me, my notes leave a lot to be desired because I can't really understand the recordings that I have from the notes, because the way we speak and the way the Americans speak, our eugenics doesn't relate to their.
That's good, actually.
So my recordings, I have a lot of difficult. That's why it takes me a lot of time to go through this. And I try to make it short because I can't handwrite everything down. Because it goes so fast.
Yes.
So excuse me, I'm doing the best I can.
Not a problem. You're doing a great job, Brother Art. One of the questions I was hoping that you could help me with in regards to us picking up the reading. Does anybody remember exactly where we left off during the 25th for this text? You didn't happen to make a note of that, did you?
Well, the 25th, what I have is Dr. Cooter expressed communication by radio, where she was expressing the need for us to maybe hook up with the radio station or.
No, I got that. I'm talking about in the in the reading of Race First, what page we left off on.
Okay.
I may have it on my computer.
I don't have it in this section, but I do have the Race First meeting, and that's separate that I keep. So I have to go to another book and look through everything else.
Okay. Don't worry about it.
Because we started, Race First was started as a class, and then y'all moved it over, and then I had to really change everything, because that happened just a couple sessions ago.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. We started reading Race First in our mass meetings, in addition to what we've got going with our study groups. And I understand, that's why I'm asking, because based on the last study group, I know we were in chapter 10, so I'm trying to remember where we were, but I've got a spot if no one else.
We left off on chapter 9 in at the previous mass meeting.
Yes, greetings, First Lady, Vice President.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, let me share.
Thank you, Diane.
Yes, we're on chapter 9. We were blazing through the chapter a good bit, but I'm not
right.
quite.
We were, and
I'm not quite sure where we left off in the chapter.
Yeah, the actual point where we left off is it was too fast for me to keep up.
Okay, well, we'll just look at, let me see. Chapter 9 goes from page 174 to 205. So
we were at least halfway through.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
So 15 pages, that'll be 190. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we were. We finished page 190. We were going to page 191, I believe.
Yes, that's close.
Okay. Okay, I got that ready. I feel like I'm missing a component. Give me 1 second. I feel like I'm skipping over something. Let me just look at the agenda. No, okay, nope. This is right. So we are preparing. Well, I guess we'll open the floor for any general comments as we prepare to go into the topic for tonight. Because it's going to take us, we're probably going to be reading for a good hour straight before we can open the floor back up. Any questions, concerns, anything we need to address after the reading?
Yes, President John.
Greetings, President Ross.
Yes, greetings, family. This is Russ Marvin. And what I asking President John if you can do is put the link to the dues payments in the chat. And everybody on the call, make sure you pay your dues for this month. Just $3 a month to help build the UNIA-ACL, Black government, world government that our ancestors created for us and built for us. And we're building it in this time. So vital for everybody to throw your $3 each month so that our division can do programs for our people and also grow and build so that one day we can have a Liberty Hall here in Atlanta, Georgia, of the UNIA. And so, yeah, we can do it. $3 a month. and invite somebody else to be a member of 421 that you know in the Atlanta area, surrounding area, and bring them in. I'm telling you, the meetings them has been very, very powerful, and we thank our leadership, you know, all executive officers, especially our president, lady president, and everyone. Race first.
Race first. Thank you, President Ross. Please, everyone, please check out what I just put in the chat. Thank you for that reminder. Yes, we want to be active members in the UNIA, as Mr. Garvey described. I'm sharing the wrong screen. Anything else? Thank you for that, Ross. Will do, Sister Diane, will do. I think you're pretty good because you were like behind up front, but then you paid a year, so that kind of puts you ahead. But I definitely will keep an eye on it. Speaking of that, so I think first Friday of the month seem to be a pretty good time right now for financial reports. So we got together, we started to update our financial report. In the process, we had to update our membership database. So we did a little bit of membership database training and financial report training, but more updates to come. All right. If there aren't any other questions, we will start the reading for tonight. Was there anyone that would like to read? Okay.
I'll read towards the end if someone else want to start.
I got you. We'll start now. It's 5:30. Let me plug my. I got my laptop plugged in. 1 second. But yeah, this is very important. These meetings, these sessions, this history. That's one of the critical things that the leadership, the division presidents that we discuss is, you know, as Brother Shaka Barak terms it, making sure we have our tools. And by tools, he means the information. Making sure we can articulate the history of the UNIA and life of Mr. Garvey. You know, and the only way to do that, well, the best way to do that, not gonna say the only way, is through the records. Race First, Philosophies and Opinions, the Constitution, Marcus Garvey and UNIA papers. But we have to come together. We have to understand and absorb this information that will make us better representatives as we go out into our communities as officers and members of the UNIA. So, all right, that's the background as to why this is a staple in Division 421 is the text Race First. So every year we make sure we touch on this text. Luckily this year, our First Lady Vice President has taken ownership of a study group for several months, and she's been doing a great job. We'll talk about that more once we finish the reading. All right, without any further ado, 532, I'll start. Page 190, Race First, and the chapter title is UNIA versus USA, or USA versus UNIA, one of the two. The post office, a long-standing tool in the fight against radicals, sometimes figured in the official struggle against Garvey. In 1919, a copy of the British espionage report Unrest Among the Negroes was forwarded by the Department of State to the Postmaster General for any action the latter might deem advisable. In that year, Assistant Attorney General R.P. Stewart and J. Edgar Hoover also suggested the use of post office laws against Garvey. I said I was going to start at 191. It's okay. But Garvey's tribulations at the hands of the post office continued, and in some respects even escalated after his deportation in 1927. Toward the end of 1928, it was reported that the postal authorities were investigating what was described as a census of the Afro-American population. Garvey was said to be directing this census from Jamaica, and 40,000 letters were said to have already been sent out. Shortly thereafter, a group of persons signing themselves sufferers who wrote to the Attorney General requesting that a stop be put to monies destined for Garvey, since he was still, in their opinion, fraudulently fleecing Black people in the United States. It was not until 1932, though, that the postal authorities finally clamped down on Garvey's mail. On May 28th, a postmaster in Young's Island, South Carolina, wrote the post office department at Charleston, South Carolina, stating that for the previous 4 to 6 weeks, a large amount of first-class mail had been coming in. It was all addressed to quote-unquote Negroes and in care of a gentleman who did, quote, not do any manual labor, end quote, but made a living as an organizer, quote, among the more ignorant Negroes in their various societies, end quote. A remarkably rapid correspondence ensued between Young's Island, Charleston, and Washington, D.C. And a mere 5 days later, the Postmaster General in Washington issued a fraud order by virtue of which all of Garvey's mail was to be stamped fraudulent and returned to Jamaica undelivered. Also, no money orders intended for Garvey or any of his concerns was to be issued, certified, or paid. Garvey had on this occasion indeed unknowingly infringed the rules, since some of the offending letters contained raffle tickets which could not be mailed without official permission. As always, Garvey and his supporters in the United States embarked on the accustomed path of protest letters to the authorities, since the ban involved all mail to and from Garvey. The order was finally revoked 2 years later in April 1934. The means by which the United States was finally able to remove Garvey from the American scene once and for all through the mechanism of the courts, and more specifically through the celebrated mail fraud trial in New York in 1923. The conviction handed down at this trial was affirmed by the United States Circuit Court of Appeals in 1925. This case was the most important, but by no means the only one involving Garvey in the United States. From fairly early in his American period, he and his concerns were practically continuously involved in litigation of some sort or another. There were libel suits, some against him, some initiated by him. There were divorce suits and countersuits involving Amy Ashwood Garvey. There were suits brought by the Black Star Line against those who had defrauded the corporation. There were numerous suits brought by Black Star Line and other employees for arrears of pay. There was the income tax case. Which was not officially declared nolle prosequi until 1932. There were cases against former employees for embezzlement or other dishonesty. Garvey had no friend in the courts, as almost all of these cases were determined in a manner unfavorable to him. Let me try to zoom in. Okay. The 1923 case marked the denouement in the I don't know that word, denouement, in the long struggle between the United States and Garvey. The trial began 1 year after Garvey had been arrested on the charge of using the mails to defraud in connection with promotion of the Black Star Line. Garvey had initially been indicted alone, after which the books of the records of the Black Star Line and the UNIA had been seized by the authorities. The prosecution had used the list of stockholders thusly obtained to send out circulars soliciting complaints against the corporation. Garvey complained that Negro World subscribers also mysteriously began receiving rival black newspapers at this time. Upon realizing that the Black Star Line was a corporation rather than a private firm, the government withdrew the original indictment against Garvey alone and substituted two new ones, naming Garvey as president, Orlando Thompson as vice president, Ellie Garcia as secretary, and George Tobias as treasurer, respectively. This was apparently nothing more than a procedural move to safeguard the prosecution's case from dismissal on a technicality. Garvey was quite obviously the target, and his three co-defendants were eventually acquitted. The case attracted much sensational publicity. Garvey himself attracted much of this when very early in the trial he accused his lawyer of counseling of counseling a deal inimical to his client's best interests. Garvey fired his lawyer at this point and therefore defended himself often in flamboyant fashion. The case itself was marked by many irregularities, all working against Garvey. Right at the beginning, Garvey made application to the trial judge, Julian Mack, disqualifying himself on the grounds that he was a member of or contributor to the NAACP. This organization, of course, was hostile to Garvey. In its organ, the crisis had devoted much space to attacks on Garvey. Many of its high-ranking members had, for many months, been holding public meetings as part of a quote-unquote Garvey must go campaign. And had actually written the Attorney General of the United States asking him to get rid of Garvey. Judge Mack admitted his connection with the NAACP, but did not consider himself biased. Therefore, did not consider himself biased, thereby, and denied the motion. Again, under cross-examination by Garvey, a government witness, Shula Cargill, who claimed to have worked for the Black Star Line from 1912 to 1921, could not name a single fellow employee or the timekeeper during this period. He even admitted in answer to question by Garvey and a judge that he had been told by the prosecutor to testify to these dates of employment. When this witness could not give the location of the College Station post office where he claimed to have regularly mailed Black Star Line letters, he admitted having been told to give his testimony by Post Office Inspector Shea. Prosecution witnesses in general were characterized as, quote, for the most part dishonest, dismissed, and disgruntled ex-employees, end quote, of Garvey. Garvey's case was further prejudiced by the appearance in New York newspapers during the duration of the trial of unsubstantiated stories of threatening letters being sent to the judge, prosecutor, and jury. The prosecutor, for his part, concluded his remarks to the jury with the plea, quote, gentlemen, will you let the tiger loose, end quote. The tiger, of course, was Garvey. The co-defendants were ignored. The two indictments contained 13 counts and alleged a scheme to defraud by means of sending certain letters through the mail. Some counts also alleged a conspiracy on the part of the defendants to implement the same scheme. Garvey was convicted on only one count, namely that for the purpose of furthering his scheme. He caused to be sent on or about December 13th, 1920. Quote, a certain letter or circulation enclosed in a post-paid envelope addressed to Benny Dancy, 34 West 131st Street, end quote. In New York City, the prosecution produced an empty envelope bearing the Black Star Line stamp and claimed that a particular letter promoting the Black Star Line had been posted in it. Dancy, a Pennsylvania station cleaner, testified that government agents had come to his house and he had handed over the envelope to them there. He could not remember what had been in that particular envelope, though he often received mail from the Black Star Line, the UNIA, and the Negro Factories Corporation. Some of this mail he did not read, but some of what he read, he was sure, quote, said invest more money in the Black Star Line for the case of purchasing bigger ships and so forth, end quote. Garvey's lawyer, in settling forth their grounds for appeal, summarized their objections to the Dancy evidence and to the case and verdict in general as follows. And when we seek to understand how it was that the jury, by some inexplicable, absurd process, found that Garvey was guilty of mailing a circular or letter to Dancy, when there was not in the evidence any such circular or letter, and there was not in the evidence any means by which the circular or letter could be identified, and when the sole exhibit consisted of an envelope that did not even appear to have been addressed by Garvey or through his procurement, then we feel fully justified in stating that the verdict was unjust and that it was the result of speculation, if not passion or prejudice.
President John.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
And it's a burning question. Through all of this, I'm looking for a word and I can't find it. Through all of this,
Trials and tribulations.
the trials and tribulations against Garvey, he still was able to sort through all of this and continue his prowess for his vision and to fight for his people. I think this is something that is overlooked because there's so much that he was doing that is almost incomprehensible for our people. I mean, wow, this is unbelievable. And through my life, this is something I never knew. And I'm an elder. And my grandparents, when I look back at this, they were more in favor of divorce. And had I known this earlier in my life, man, I would have such a different outlook, and I would have had a different approach to my life. Now, my mother was totally different. My mother and father, man, I can go on and on. I'm gonna stop right here. Race first, Sam.
Race first. President Ross, were you saying something?
Yeah, I was saying, let's go through the reading. Take notes, everybody. Take notes because this is deep. The USA versus the UNIA. So, there's a lot of talking we have to do when we finish the reading, but let's get through the reading first. That's why I recommend this book to everybody, Race First, because it will tell you the daily struggles of our people approximately 120 years ago, during the 1920s when we built the UNIA government. But let's continue the reading and we'll talk a little later.
I agree. I will continue with the conclusion of the trial. With the conclusion of the trial, Garvey was on June 21st, given the maximum sentence of 5 years plus $1,000 fine. He was also ordered to pay the entire cost of the trial. 1 second. The trial had been a long one, and this fact had apparently added to the judge's irritation, since he had other business to attend to. At the close of the second week, Judge Mack had requested the attorneys for both sides to speed up proceedings so that he could charge the jury at the end of the third week, since he wanted to attend an international Jewish convention in Chicago. Garvey's response was to jump up and shout, "What?" and jeopardize the liberty and freedom of Marcus Garvey, end quote. Garvey's problems did not end with his conviction. Despite his notice of appeal, he was lodged in the Tombs prison and was denied bail. Prosecutor Maddock further argued that if even bail were set, it should be in a high amount, since UNIA monies were being used to purchase guns and ammunition for the Universal African Legion, who would go to any means necessary to secure Garvey's release. Garvey's followers spared no pains in their efforts to secure his release on bail. A Marcus Garvey Committee on Justice was immediately set up. Some of the members journeyed to the Department of Justice to request bail for Garvey. During their discussions with the department officials, Attorney General W.G. Krim began irritated and expressed the desire to see a quick appeal so that Garvey could be sent to the federal jail in Atlanta. When bail was finally allowed after 3 months, it was set in the high figure of $15,000. The extra 3 months of incarceration pending bail was not afterward deducted from Garvey's 5-year sentence. The extra 3 months incarceration pending bail was not afterward deducted from Garvey's 5-year sentence. Even after bail was granted, Garvey's supporters were still faced with unusual frustrations for no bonding companies would handle Garvey's bail, and the money had to be raised in cash. In a further effort to harass the UNIA, the bail was forfeited by Prosecutor Maddock in February 1925 when he issued a bench warrant for Garvey and had him arrested at the 125th Street Station in Manhattan. Garvey was on his way from Detroit to surrender to the authorities after being informed by telegram that his appeal had been lost. He had been caught unawares because the appeal had suddenly been brought forward from the previously intimated date. The arrest and forfeiture of bail took place despite an agreement between Garvey's lawyer and the district attorney that Garvey was on his way to surrender and would be produced on the following morning. The forfeited bail money was returned only after several more months of legal battles. Garvey's conviction received its ultimate seal of finality when the Supreme Court in March 1925 refused to review his case. Of this whole legal episode, Garvey's counsel, whom he had retained to advise him after he assumed his own defense during the 1923 trial, remarked, quote, "In my 23 years of practice at the New York bar, I have never handled a case in which the defendant has been treated with such manifest unfairness and with such a palpable attempt at persecution as this one," end quote. With this resolution of his appeal, Garvey was dispatched to the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, never to return to New York. But even the question of which prison he should go to involved behind-the-scenes official deliberation. After passing sentence, Judge Mack had agreed to a change of prison from Atlanta to Leavenworth in Kansas if possible, since the southern prison might be unbearable for somebody of Garvey's reputation. Garvey himself expressed a preference for Leavenworth. The court was advised that special authority would have to be sought from the Attorney General, and such authority was requested. Washington denied the request on the grounds that it stated as its only reason that the fact of Garvey's color. With Garvey in Atlanta, a defense committee was quickly formed, and from the time of his incarceration until his eventual deportation in 1927, an intense pressure was brought to bear on the United States officialdom for his release. UNIA branches from all over the world dispatched thousands of petitions, letters, resolutions, telegrams, and the like to various government departments and to the President of the United States requesting Garvey's release without deportation. Mass rallies were held in Harlem and elsewhere. Many Black churches regularly celebrated Marcus Garvey Sunday, when prayers were offered for his release. Many Black and some white newspapers lent their editorial columns to protest against the irregular aspects of the trial and the need for justice to be seen to be done. The UNIA sent delegations to various officials, including one to pardon attorney James A. Finch At headquarters, Liberty Hall, Garvey's chair was left empty at meetings with his robes of office draped over it. Some middle-of-the-road Black intellectuals denounced Garvey's imprisonment as politically motivated. Dean Kelly Miller of Howard University wrote, quote, "is a dangerous principle to impose legal punishment upon men for their belief rather than for their behavior. This trick is as old as political cunning and chicanery. Did they not treat Socrates, Jesus, and John Brown so?" End quote. Professor W.H.H. Hart of the Howard University Law School showed that Garvey was wrongly incarcerated. Even some of Garvey's bitterest enemies, such as William Pickens of the NAACP, had second thoughts in the light of the injustice which had been perpetrated. To cap it all, in January 1927, 9 of the 12 jurors who had returned the verdict of guilty against Garvey signed a declaration stating that Garvey had been sufficiently punished. 2 of the jurors could not be located, and 1 declined. One juror, Martin J. Cregan, admitted that he had held out for a long time in the jury room against convicting Garvey. He had preferred convicting co-defendant Orlando Thompson, but was eventually dissuaded by his fellow jurors. Garvey, of course, agreed concerning the political nature of his conviction. While still lodged in the Tombs prison in 1923, he declared, quote, "I am here because I dared to tell the Negro that the time has come for him to lift up his head and be a man," end quote. He never ceased referring to his trial as a frame-up by the United States government because of his influence. In February 1925, he solicited the aid of Senator James E. Watson for a review of the inequities in his case, adding, quote, "it will make interesting American history," end quote. The senator took him up with the Department of Justice, but was informed that there was no basis for Garvey's complaint. Garvey also dispatched applications for executive clemency in 1925, 1926, and 1927. In jail, meanwhile, the authorities tried to shield Garvey from the curious such as a stranger who wanted to interview him for a book he was writing, from his enemies such as the Baltimore Afro-American, which requested information on what works was assigned to Garvey. what kind of food he was eating, etc. No doubt for yet another sensational article. And from his more solicitous friends who requested a medical certificate showing Garvey's current health condition. The most important consequence of Garvey's trial and conviction in terms of his protracted struggle waged against him by the United States government was it finally cleared the way for his deportation. In 1921, the government had almost succeeded in keeping Garvey out of the country, and official circles had been considering ways and means of getting rid of him through deportation even before that. As early as August 1919, Attorney General R.P. Stewart transmitted an anonymous letter he had received informing on Garvey's alleged unlawful activities to the Secretary of Labor, inquiring whether any action could be taken under the immigration laws. The Department of Labor promised to look into the matter. Garvey's narrow escape from unofficial deportation in 1921 had brought home to him in most pertinent manner the vulnerability of his position as a British subject. Immediately upon re-entry into the United States, he had therefore obtained his first citizenship papers in New York City and looked forward to obtaining his full citizenship 2 years later. But before his citizenship could become final, he was arrested, indicted, tried, and convicted. The result of this was that with a crime involving moral turpitude now against his name, he was not only hindered in his bid to obtain full citizenship, but became immediately exposed to the danger of deportation. Thus, Garvey argued in an application for pardon in 1925 that not only had he been framed on the mail fraud charge, but that the 1924 income tax charge had been introduced as a standby in case the mail fraud case should fail. And if they both failed, Garvey thought that he would still be charged with immorality under the Mann Act or anything else that could render him deportable. The official attempt to move against Garvey before he could become a United States citizen was facilitated by the simultaneous clamor for his deportation raised by his black detractors from the quote-unquote Marcus Garvey Must Go campaign. Chandler Owen, for example, in 1922 sought to distinguish between his magazine's objections to the deportation of foreign-born European radicals on the one hand and his advocacy of deportation for Garvey by arguing that radicals should only be against the deportation of class war prisoners, which Garvey, in his opinion, was not. He then examined several clauses of the migration laws to show their applicability to Garvey. The laws rendered deportable, quote, persons who are directly or indirectly members or affiliated with any organization entertaining and teaching disbelief in or opposition to organized government, end quote. He argued that Garvey's dialogue with the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, qualified him here. Garvey also qualified in his position under a clause relating to people likely to become a public charge in view of the Black Star Line's dealings. Again, the law referred to, quote, all idiots, imbeciles, feeble-minded persons, end quote, and the like. Here, too, he thought that Garvey would qualify. Accordingly, no sooner was Garvey's conviction upheld on appeal in 1925 than the government made known its intention to deport him after the expiry of his jail term. Shortly after his arrival in Atlanta, he was brought before the immigration authorities there for a hearing, as a result of which a warrant of deportation was issued against him, ready to be executed whenever he should be released from jail. The question of the legality of Garvey's deportation is shrouded in considerable uncertainty. According to immigration authorities, Garvey was deported on December 2nd, 1927 on the following grounds. So, yeah, officially deported December 2nd, 1927. Sister Diane, you ready to take over after this? That he was a person likely
Yes, I can.
Okay. That he was a person likely to become a public charge at the time of his entry, and that subsequent to May 1st, 1917, he had been sentenced to imprisonment for a short term of 1 year or more because of conviction in this country of a crime involving moral turpitude committed within 5 years after entry, to wit, using the mails to defraud.
Okay. This was okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So this was nothing but a resuscitation of the provisions of the relevant statute. Garvey's date of entry into the country was given here as 1921, which did not make too much sense since the crime he was accused of having committed was allegedly committed in December 1920, even though he was not arrested until 1922. Thus, according to this statement, the crime was committed not within 5 years of entry, but before entry. The 1921 date, of course, was the date of last entry, Garvey having initially entered in 1916. Perhaps because he considered his deportation inevitable, Garvey seemed not to have offered any objection during the deportation hearing in March 1925, even though he testified on that occasion. This is borne out by the willingness expressed in the following months to waive his right to remain in the country, although under protest, since he was sure he was not in a legally deportable category. He wrote on this occasion as part of an application for clemency that I am cognizant of the fact that I do not fall under the deportable statute, yet for the purpose of satisfying my enemies who are politically powerful enough to frame, indict, and convict me without ordinary hope of redress, and for showing my willingness to obey the law and as interpreted by those in authority, I have waived my rights to contest beyond the allotting of a reasonable time for me to straighten out all my many business affairs in the interest of my race in America, by signifying my willingness to leave the country, the land of the pilgrims and of liberty. Pilgrims and of liberty. He wrote in similar vein to the pardon attorney in December 1925, given ill health, asthma, as the reason for his renewed application. He noted that his earlier application for clemency had been refused and had not been submitted to the president. Since he said he heard that he was to be deported, he would leave on his own accord if given 2 weeks to gather his belongings and remove his family. Quote, "This I respectfully request," he said, quote, "so as to save the further humiliation of arrest by the Department of Labor and deportation as a criminal to my home, where I have never committed crime and where my character is unimpeached." Yet by late 1926, we find him complaining that since he has been in jail, his enemies visited the Department of Labor to press for his deportations. Garvey's uncertainty over what position to adopt concerning his deportation was matched by a similar uncertainty in at least some official quarter. In January 1926, Attorney General John Sargent briefed the president on Garvey's application for commutation of sentence. He pointed out that Garvey, as an alien, was ineligible for parole and was, in any case, under a deportation order. Assistant United States Attorney Mattock, the persecutor in the mail fraud case, was still, Sargent wrote, opposed to deportation. Judge Mack, however, was not opposed to commutation with deportation, but not before Garvey should have served 2 years of actual imprisonment. The Attorney General then went on to state his own very unique objection to deportation. Unique objection to deportation. Garvey undoubtedly holds today an important and controlling influence over many thousands of the Negro race in the United States. And while it may be that his further imprisonment will result in dissatisfaction to a greater or less extent, his release and deportation would by no means eliminate him as a menace. While a prisoner, his activities are subject to control, but with unrestricted freedom in another country to continue his propaganda. He might become even a greater menace to his own race and to society generally. So he counseled denial. He counseled denial of Garvey's application. His argument is rendered doubly interested by the fact that the British acting government of Jamaica, Garvey's own country, shortly afterwards inquired of the Foreign Office in London whether it would be feasible to ask the American authorities not to deport Garvey back to Jamaica, presumably because he feared the effects that Garvey would have on that island. The Foreign Office thought that any such representation would serve no useful purpose. However, with the chorus of voices clamoring for Garvey's release, building up to a crescendo, the Attorney General was ready to change his mind by 1927. So in a memorandum to President Coolidge dated November 12, 1927, he counseled immediate commutation together with deportation. This time, his advice was based on the most unusual, by no means healthy condition of affairs induced by the Garvey case. He pointed out to the president that far from the imprisonment of Garvey's serving as a deterrent to wrongdoing, the Black population saw his continued incarceration as, quote, an act of oppression of the race in their efforts in the direction of race progress. He pointed out that his advice would have been different with Garvey, were Garvey to remain in the United States. So, Whereas in 1926, he had been fearful of the influence by which Garvey might continue to have from abroad, by 1927, the Attorney General considered the situation caused in the United States by Garvey's continued incarceration so critical that it was imperative to get him out of the country immediately. President Coolidge accordingly commuted Garvey's sentence on November 18, 1927. The official wrongdoing of the relevant parts of the document was as follows. Whereas it had been made to appear to me that the end of justice had been sufficiently met in this case by the imprisonment already served, I, Calvin Coolidge, do hereby commute the sentence of the said Marcus Garvey to expire at once. Under normal circumstances, Garvey's sentence would have expired on October 14, 1928, with good conduct, despite the fact that the president commuted the sentence on November 18 to expire at once. It was not until November 21st that the pardon attorney got around to writing the warden of the prison to this effect. He enclosed the original warrant of commutation, but told the warden not to deliver it until the immigration authorities called to take charge of Garvey's for deportation. The warrant of commutation, of course, made no mention of deportation. Garvey, meanwhile, remained in jail, totally ignorant of the fact that his sentence had several days previously expired, quote, at once. And indeed, several months after his release, he seemed to have believed that it was commuted on November 24th, even though he claimed not to have been notified until even after that date. I'm doing this on my cell phone. So while Garvey was being held in jail, despite the commutation, his wife and lawyers were making feverish attempt to obtain at least a temporary respite for him to settle his affairs in New York. Armin Kahn, Garvey's lawyer, recalled his effort in a long letter to Miss Amy Jacks Garvey on February 24th, 1927. Kahn and Mrs. Garvey journeyed to Washington, D.C., where on February 25th, Kahn, in the presence of Mrs. Garvey, presented arguments before Attorney General Surgeons for the commutation of Garvey's sentence. This was followed by a long conference with Mr. Finch, the pardon attorney. A supplemental brief was submitted to Finch on behalf of Garvey. The following day, Kahn submitted yet another brief to Finch, yet Kahn's first intimation of the president's November 18 commutation came on November 23rd, when evening papers carried the story.
Diane, you want me to take over here?
Sure, you can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Kahn thereupon dispatched a telegram to Atlanta Penitentiary asking for further information. He referred to the Immigrations Department, to which he dispatched a telegram which remained unanswered. He nevertheless presented himself a few days later at a hearing of the Board of review of the Department of Labor Immigration Division. Therefore, he was able to pursue the files on the Garvey case. Among the materials in the files, a telegram from the Commissioner of Immigration at New York advising that Garvey's port of departure be changed from New York to New Orleans. The files showed also that the November 25th, a day or two previously, the Immigration Department had reconsidered a previous decision to release Garvey on $1,000 bail. Instead, they would detain him for immediate deportation. Later that same day, Cohn presented his arguments to the Board of Review. The chairman of the board replied that he could not release Garvey on bail because the president's commutation was dependent on immediate deportation. Cohn did not yet know the warrant or commutation did not, in fact, bear such a proviso. Cohn's letter continued after a lengthy pro and con, in which it appeared that the chairman of the board was the attorney arguing the opposition to the application. A decision upon the application was reserved. This appeared to be a delaying tactic, and Cohn objected, apparently in vain. He therefore hurried to New Orleans, hoping to lodge a writ of
habeas corpus,
and argued against the government's right to deport Garvey. His argument would be based on the fact that Garvey's residence in the United States should date from 1917, rather than 1921, as the government alleged. He would argue that Garvey in 1921 had been issued a green tax clearance receipt stating that he would be returning soon. This, Cohn would argue, was tantamount to the acceptance of a resident lien, and thus Garvey's return did not constitute re-entry without the meaning of Statute 4298, 1/3 of the United States revised statutes, which provided inter alia that the alien residence of 5 years or less was deportable of a crime. He would argue that since Garvey had arrived in the United States in 1917 and was convicted 6 years after, in 1923, he was not within the provisions of the law. Cohn does not seem to have addressed himself to the fact that Garvey's alleged crime was in fact committed in 1920. well within the 5-year period based on 1970, even though the conviction came in 1923, or for the fact that the contrary consideration, which may have been reduced to the government's case to absurdity, named that if, as they allege, Garvey's entry into the country can only date from 1921, and if the 5-year period began on that date, then the crime would have been committed before entry. Presumably on his way to Louisiana, Khan stopped in Atlanta and had visited Garvey, where he was held at the United States Immigration Station. For some strange reason, Garvey decided against the habeas corpus attempt because he did not want to obstruct the immigration department. This action may possibly be explained by the fact that both Garvey and Khan still thought that the warrant of communication was explicitly contingent upon deportation. In fact, immediately prior to his deportation, he did dispatch telegrams of protest to the president and the Secretary of Labor. He may possibly already have aborted the ship at New Orleans when he dispatched these telegrams. For he explained a few months later that it was only that he learned the truth conditions of his communication. With Garvey against the habeas corpus procedure, Khan decided that his last chance in persuading the authorities at Washington to voluntarily and without court order give Garvey a residence respite to visit New York and settle his affairs. So he left Atlanta immediately for Washington, where he argued his case for Judge Smeltzer at the Department of Labor. The judge refused to a short release on bail, citing the alleged presidential deportation stipulation. Khan next headed for the Department of Justice, where he met with no success. What happened was best related to his own words. However, at this office, the writer saw the copy of commutation of the president, and not a single word was set out for the commutation for deportation. In other words, the commutation of sentence is a clear out, unconditional commutation, and it is not, and was stated repeatedly of various officials in the Immigration Department, subject to immediate deportation. The authorities, of course, were fully aware of their deception. A memorandum in Remarcus Garvey lodged in the files of the Office of the Pardon Attorney and dated December 14, 1927, explains that the commutation was indeed unconditional, but points out that Garvey, in an application of clemency, had expressed his desire to leave voluntarily after some time to arrange his affairs in New York. The memorandum concluded, however, that the deportation was effective by operation of law rather than the president or Department of Justice. Presumably, this was a reference to deportation for crime committed within the 5-year period. The question remains as to why the Immigration Department lied to Cone if the operation of law would have secured Garvey's deportation in any event. The answer may be that they were not unaware of possible flaws in the operation of law argument, based as it was on the possible unsound premise that Garvey had entered the United States in 1921 rather than in 1960. Had Combs seen the warrant of commutation in time, there might well have ensued a lengthy legal battle, during all of which time Garvey would have been free. Such freedom may have been in time to arrest the splits which were beginning to develop within the UNIA. Certainly in view of the mantle of martyrdom, which Garvey knew to exploit so well. And in view of the broadly based support for his release, he might have pushed the UNIA in America to deeds rivaling his early years. One point worth making, however, from the point of view of officialdom, is the presidential commutation. Though devoid of any reference to deportation, was not necessarily any indication of presidential opposition to deportation, since the president had been advised by the Attorney General that commutation plus immediate deportation was the best course. Still, it appeared that the taking no chances and lying about the warrant of commutation, the authorities bought barely enough time to get Garvey out without what would have been much more formidable fight. So that in 1927, the United States succeeded as narrowly in deporting Garvey as he himself had possibly narrowly succeeded in entering the country in 1921. Attempts to enable Garvey to re-enter the country were made throughout the rest of his life, up to shortly before his death. A report of 1929 stated that a Black Chicago congressman, Oscar DePriest, and Robert L. Ephraim, president of the Chicago UNIA, had met together with others to discuss the possibility of bringing Garvey back to the United States. Garvey, at about the same time, said that he would not want to return to the United States except as a private citizen, since rotten United States politics had been a source of great trouble to them. In 1931, the Negro World started a campaign to gather 100,000 signatures to support the petition. The move was opposed by veteran Black anti-Garveyists, St. George Schuler, and the conservative New York Age, which thought that Garvey's return would be a calamity. In January 1935, Garvey himself wrote to the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, informing them that he wished to spend 35 days in transit to New York on his way to England. He wished to obtain medical treatment for his diabetes and to see friends while there. For several months in 1934 and 1935, the Secretary of the Philadelphia UNIA sent a steady stream of letters to President Roosevelt, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Labor's Immigration and Naturalization Service, asking for Garvey's return in spite of his conviction, or feeling that his conviction be set aside to facilitate his return. He was met by stony official assurances that Garvey's conviction for a crime involving moral turpitude made him mandatory excludable. He therefore found it necessary to remind the Assistant Attorney General, who was answering his correspondence, that regardless of whether Mr. Garvey be allowed to return, the program will still go on. For Africa shall still be redeemed, even if the divine creator, as in the days of Pharaoh. However, neither his assurances that Garvey had been framed, nor the reminder that Black people had voted Democrat, nor anything else could make any impression on official stoniness. Wow. Excuse me. Other elements within the UNIA kept up the effort. However, and in 1937, consideration was even given to having a special bill introduced if all else failed. Out of these attempts in 1937 and 38 arose the Second Regional Conference Committee. On Mr. Marcus Garvey's visit to America, chaired by Thomas W. Harvey, the committee sought a temporary permit which would allow Garvey to remain in the United States from June 1 to August 31 in order to hold an international convention from August 1 to August 17. these efforts failed. Despite the assistance of Senator Bilbro and some of the fellow segregationists, and despite the blessing of Garvey himself, the representations were still made to government officials in the latter part of 1939. But by this time, Garvey was less than a year away from his grave. Only death could extinguish the hopes of his faithful followers in the United States, and he might yet one day return to rescue them from their misery.
Excellent job, Brother Art. Thank you, Sister Diane, as well. That completes the reading of what's this, chapter 9 of Race First, titled USA versus UNIA. At this time, open the floor for any questions or comments.
Race first, everybody.
Race First.
This is Reverend Lee. I wanted to continue on reading, but I know we don't have time. But it's so good. I'm gonna have to get this and for my individual as well to read it again, because we could certainly keep going, President John. But yeah, I just have a question about it, and I was waiting to get to this Sunday so that I could be reminded if there was a plan to request or argue for the exoneration of Marcus Garvey in the U.S. And
I've heard of some private or individuals or some individual divisions even working on that. I want to say on the leadership level, let me see, that has not been considered a focus.
okay.
The feeling is that, we know what we're dealing with the American leadership. So we don't feel that we should have to ask them for forgiveness. We know Mr. Garvey is innocent, so our word should stand firm, and we shouldn't ask anyone else. That's how I would paraphrase our leadership's position.
Okay, that makes sense. And the reason that I was asking too is because I heard a question about the possibility of some of the funding that he had earned from business and that kind of thing may have been being retained by the US. And so there may be a request for that too legally to give back to the organization. So I was just wondering if that would go together, if it was separate, and if it was going to start at all to ask for those funds. Because I see a lot of the legal matters that's in this book may be a help to support the case. And I also wanted to see if there is a case, what some of the legal minds are putting in the case and if they needed some help in research. That's my reason for asking.
Thank you for that question. Council General, is there anything you want to state to those questions? Attorney Imhotep, are you there?
Yes, I didn't get all of the questions, so I'll have to.
Sister Reverly, could you repeat in regards to the legal?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was a long question, but I'm thinking about it as I was trying to talk it out as well. But I think I heard like a question about if some of the funds that may have been held by the US would be legally requested for the organization to get back. I'll just leave it there. is there a plan to ask if there is any funds from for the organization?
Yeah, I guess she said, does the UNIA have any claim to what has been lost legally?
Mhm.
And is there any discussion in regards to that?
Thank you, President John.
No problem, Sister Reverend.
I'm not certain, other than individuals who may have, paid funds into the Black Star Line,
Mhm.
that they would have been given notice that there's some funds here that you can claim to redeem any loss that you have. And I'm thinking at the time there wasn't anyone or very many people individually claiming the funds, that they could see what was being done
Mhm.
here by the government.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether the UNIA could get any funds, I'm not quite certain the U.S. government's stance
Mhm.
on the UNIA, whether they were somehow guilty to, or and that they wouldn't get the funds.
Mhm.
We don't know and have to look into that. And that's, again, some over 100 years
Right.
ago, the 1920s.
Right. Does he have heirs?
Yes, he has a son.
Okay.
Well,
Does-
well, back up. We're talking about the UNIA here.
Yes, that's true. You're very true. Yes. I want to keep them separate, but I'm just talking as I'm thinking about it, asking
Okay.
about the heirs. So does the US, as you know, recognize the organization UNIA? Do they know that it's a live, living organization still?
I don't know that their current position status of how oh, but they think of us. I'm sure their intelligent agencies, which are many, know the trouble status split
Mhm.
that we're in here. And I would think they know our situation.
Okay. Okay. That's it for now. Thank you for answering, and thank you again, Brother John, for clarifying my jumbled question, because I think fast a lot. So
No problem.
I appreciate it. Race first, family.
First, that's a great question. One thing also to consider, which was also mentioned in this text tonight, is the splits in the UNIA. So that causes some confusion in regards to legal claims due to those splits. But
Okay.
great
Thank
question. Any other questions for tonight's reading or what we read last meeting?
Yes, President John.
President Ross.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to Sister Miss Rev's questions and add a little bit more
Please.
what our Consul General added. Number one is that everyone should know that the United States confiscated a whole heap of UNIA property, money, lands, merchandise, everything after they deported Garvey. And the number one thing that they use against us as African people and other people they don't like is that they freeze our accounts. So imagine during this time is over 10 million members of the UNIA, and half of them are in the United States, 5 million or more. And divisions them had over 1,000 people. 1,000 members in one division is very small. The biggest division was a New York division that had over 40,000 members, one division in New York, and given 25 cents a day. We had millions of dollars in the bank that the United States confiscated. And today, what's happening with the UNIA property, you'll find European countries selling UNIA flags, and we're not getting compensated. So everything that is red, black, and green, or UNIA Liberty Halls, they're our property and they belong to us, just like Africa for the Africans. Africa belongs to us too. There's many exoneration efforts going on to exonerate the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. One of them is led by Marcus Garvey's son, Dr. Julius Garvey, and you'll hear him talk about it. And there's been different resolutions inside the United States government for the exoneration of Marcus Garvey, but yet it hasn't passed throughout the whole government or Congress system.
Okay, I'm sorry, Brother Roz. Please forgive me for interrupting. So the what you're saying can be found in some of the at Congress, their documentation or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think it's HR 40. HR
Okay.
40, the resolution to exonerate Marcus Garvey. If you search HR 40,
Yeah.
you'll see it come up. It was presented by a Black congressman, I think, out of Chicago, the exoneration of Marcus Garvey, but it hasn't passed. So there's been many efforts. And also you should know that in 2010, it was between 2009 and 2011, the UNIA had two citizenship programs, one in Washington, D.C., and the other one in Atlanta here during that time. And I attended the event, and at the event was a representative from the United States State Department had attended the event to give well wishes. No, I believe he attended the event in Washington, D.C. to give well wishes to the UNIA government. So,
thank you for the clarification and added information. I'm definitely going to look up that because I do like looking at what's on the floor at Congress. So that's one of the reasons I was asking too.
true.
Thank you so much.
And the last thing is that the history of the UNIA, as President John said, because of the splits, is very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to learn the history and know the history, because there are several groups out there calling themselves UNIA, and so
Okay,
that's
understood.
that's another discussion for another time. But I just wanted to give you that response in addition to what was said.
Thank you.
Yes. Now HR 40 is the reparations bill.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me find it for you, the exact one. HR 40 had came to me, but I'll find you the exoneration Marcus Garvey bill. You can continue, President John. I'll put it up in a second.
Well, if there aren't, we'll open for additional questions. But I will prepare to move to the next segment of the meeting. But again, I'll, if you got any questions on this, you will get a chance. But I did want to mention our Tuesday study groups. Sister Reverly mentioned continuing the reading. Tuesday, 8 p.m. we've been having our Race First study group. I haven't sent out the email notifications recently. We'll send that out. We will be continuing Race First for an additional 2 weeks. So this coming Tuesday and next Tuesday, as of the 24th, we will switch over to a course of African philosophy as a training for our officers here in 421. So just a heads up for anyone interested in participating in our Race First study groups or the upcoming Message to the People study group. Tuesday, 8 p.m., we will be sending out the email invitations for those programs. Yes. Anything else on race first?
Yeah, I just wanted to also add that we can't even dwell on all the injustices and all the rules that they broke. And, at the end of the day, all of it was to stop the influence here in the country, stop the influence in all of their colonized islands, all of the colonized countries on the African continent. That's all they were trying to stop, just the upliftment of Black people worldwide. But what we can't ignore is the amount of loss in money, because all the businesses that were thwarted, I mean, things continued after a while, but it didn't really there's monetary loss to all of it when you think about the sheer number of members, the papers that they stopped. I mean, it's all, I mean, they were like borderline saying the stuff was treason and mail fraud. All of it was just nonsense, and all of it had monetary value. So we can't overlook that.
I understand. Yes. And with the interest as well, we got to keep that in mind. It's not $12,000 in 1920. Isn't $12,000 today? It's much more.
Absolutely.
Very, very true. Good point, First Lady, Vice President. Anyone else? We're close. We're approaching 7:00. Officers, we're gonna switch it up tonight. We got a good group of officers, but I want to jump to member share. And then officers, we can have a discussion on anything that was not discussed during our yesterday's executive meeting. So please hold tight, officers. From overall standpoint, from my standpoint, I will give a brief president's report for our members. We have the President's Connect at least once a month, first Wednesday. So we had that meeting this past week. Divisions are doing well. There was not much updates provided as to what's coming down the pipeline. The meeting was primarily centered around a recap of the August convention. So I'll do a brief. I don't know if I got that slide. No, I don't think I do. I was going to just show the HEC, the updated HEC, but that's the main update that was discussed was the new HEC body. We talked about the parade and convention 2025.
President John?
Yes, sir.
I had a comment to make on the book race first.
Okay.
Yeah. What the reading shows us in the USA versus UNIA, that our people was yearning for doing for ourselves and self-reliance and generating our own funds and having a lot of Black businesses during that time. And Garvey was an inspirational part of the Harlem Renaissance and the movement our people had during the 1920s. And Garvey was so powerful that even after they deported him to Jamaica, back to Jamaica, he was still, brothers and sisters from here in the United States were sending money to the UNIA, that the post office had to get involved and try to stop. So not only did they take UNIA property, confiscate UNIA accounts, but also in the mail, they confiscated the money from out of the mail that was being sent to the UNIA for the Black Star Line ships, where we as African people have our own ships and other things of self-reliance. So that was a very powerful chapter, USA versus UNIA, because we all have to know who are the five forces that was against our people forming our government in 1920, the UNIA-ACL government, global government. Only two global governments exist based upon their constitution, and the Vatican is one a Catholic is a global government, but we, UNIA, is the only other global government. And there are several governments without a territorial border, including the Palestinian government. But anyway, what I'm saying is that the forces that was against us and form our own government is the United States. And we can see how the United States didn't want African people to do for ourselves and rise up to our great powers. Also, we have the European powers, because the Garvey movement in Africa, the amount of divisions that form and the members of that were the UNIA, they were kicking out the colonizers out of Africa and taking back control of Africa. The UNIA message was reaching all over in the four corners of earth. The third force that was against us forming our own government was the communists. Back in the 1920s, communism was very popular in the United States, and more popular than it is today. And the communists was trying to come integrate the UNIA movement in meetings with thousands of people at the meetings and trying to get the Africans to follow communism. And Garvey said, communism is not about Africa, so therefore we respect them, but we're not going to follow them. And the other force, the fourth force that was against our government forming was brothers and sisters within inside the UNIA who sold out Garvey and who were robbing from the UNIA and stealing money from the UNIA, from the different divisions and the different programs that the UNIA was providing for our people. And that was how much? 4. And the fifth force that was against our government forming was the integrationists. The integration
organizations.
Yeah, the other Black organizations,
Yes,
the NAACP, and other integrationist organizations were against our government forming. So everybody should know those 5 forces. So tonight's topic focused on how the United States government was against UNIA. And there's more to come in the book Race First. So everybody make sure you jump on the study group Tuesday night, led by First Lady Vice President Diane. We have a couple more chapters to finish in the book Race First. Race First, everyone.
Race first.
Yes, and I'd also like to add that the influence even led to so many Black Wall Streets that were deliberately destroyed, and then the integrationists end up winning, I guess, because that's like the illusion of inclusion, and that ended up destroying all our self-sufficiency movements and the destruction of the Black Wall Streets. Somewhere we build, but if you look at the status that where we are today, we only own 1% of the wealth, less than 1%. So in this country, so I mean, it's really deep when you think about all of it. But anyway, that's all I wanted to add. Race first.
Race first. Just to summarize, and
If I make a correction in what I said about HR 40, that is reparations. But in the chat, I put the link to the efforts that's been going on since 1987. So I'll just go ahead and read it short 1 paragraph. Congressional efforts for exoneration have been ongoing since 1987, with the resolutions introduced by former Congressman Charles Rangel and Clark. Garvey's vision of racial justice and his impact on society are praised. In February, Clark and Congressman Hank Johnson introduced legislation calling for Garvey's exoneration. Garvey, a Jamaican-born nationalist and civil rights activist, founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and was wrongly convicted in 1923. The congressman seeks to reclaim Garvey's legacy and honor his work for the Black community. So, and the link is there if anybody want to read the full article on it. So yes, there are congressional efforts going on to exonerate Marcus Garvey since 1987.
Thank you, President.
Wow.
Just to recap, as Ross mentioned, the 5 forces. We just finished chapter 9 in the study group. I think we're halfway through chapter 10. Chapter 10 is Garvey and the communists. So that's where we're going into the communist aspect. On page 13, Dr. Tony Martin summarizes the 5 forces in this paragraph. He says, Garvey's unparalleled success had the effect of arraying him against a most powerful conglomeration of hostile forces. The United States government was against him because they considered all Black radicals subversive. European governments were against him because he was a threat to the stability of their colonies. The communists were against him because he successfully kept Black voters out of their grasp. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and other integrationist organizations were against him because he argued that white segregationists were the true spokesman for white America, and because he in turn advocated Black separatism. His organization also had to contend with unscrupulous opportunists who are not above sabotaging its working for personal gain. Some of these forces, many of them are still active today, so we must know this information. All right. We're going to close up the topic. Any closing questions, comments on the topic? Okay. Officers, y'all get the day off for reports. We'll expect some detailed reports for our fourth Sunday mass meeting. And fifth Sunday will be Dr. Sham. So officers, please hang tight. And it look like I've already lost, we're losing officers now that we're talking about discussing some things. So we'll go through our members and allow our members to drop off, and then officers will have that discussion. So members and brothers, we should always understand we allow our sisters to speak first. We must be patient. So Sister Dara Monifa, greetings. Members share anything that you'd like to share, personal, business, community, international politics, whatever it may be. Sister Monifa, are you there? Dara Monifa, sorry. All right, we'll try to come back to Sister Dara Monifa. We'll jump over to our sister in Union City, Miss Rosa.
Greetings, everyone. I'm enjoying this mass meeting, and I would like to say that it's very interesting in the background and the story of Marcus Garvey. I get so inspired every time I hear what he had done and what he had accomplished, and the fear that the people had of him because he was so powerful. He was just God sent. And the other thing I want to say is I heard a little bit about Jamaican celebration parade.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that? I think I heard a little bit about it from Reverend Al Sharpton. He said he was there and near the end, but I didn't have a chance yet to go and really read about what happened.
Jamaican celebration parade, I'm not sure.
They parade in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago for Jamaica.
A couple weeks ago in Brooklyn.
Yeah, they had a shooting, a mass shooting at the end of the West Indian parade.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, because I didn't get a chance to go back on it, but if you pull it up, it's there.
You know what day of August that was?
Maybe not at the end of the month.
End of the month.
I'm not quite sure because I've been busy and I haven't had a chance to read up on to pull it up. But I know that Reverend Al Sharpton talked about it on his show because he was there.
Okay.
And the parade went well until at the very end, he said.
Anybody have any information on that they can speak to? It says 7 hours ago. Well, I guess that's an update 7 hours ago. 5 days. Yeah, I don't have any details on that. West Indian Day Parade in Brooklyn. Something I'd have to look into.
Oh, okay then. Thank you. I thought maybe someone may have on the meeting may have heard about what had happened.
No, in our Wednesday meeting, that this did not come up. So this would have come from our New York division, but they did not make any mention of that event.
Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Not a problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll keep it moving with our sisters. Next sister, we got a lot of officers on here. That's really good. Do we have any more sisters? I think that's all non-officer sisters. Brother Najee, Sister Brittany, is there anything that you wanted to share?
Race first family. Not as of this moment. But yeah, came in a little late, but so far the meeting's going pretty good. I do want to continue to make more of an effort to go to the study group on Tuesdays. I know are we still having the officers training afterward on Tuesdays?
Officers training officially will be carried out through Message to the People, with addition to supplementary training programs specific to the office. So for you, financial, I need you to be prepared for the financial meetings. We're looking at first Friday of the month. That'll be your hands-on training for that, and then Tuesdays, Message to the People.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll make sure I'm there. Thank you, President John.
Thank you, Brother Najee. Looks like we had some other sisters. Sorry, go ahead, somebody else.
There's a headline that says 5 people shot at New York's West Indian West Indian American Day Parade, police says. 5 people shot. So yeah. Who knows, sometimes yeah. Anyway, there's a headline on it. It's a story. I'll read it if anyone wants to. This was by the Associated Press, it looks like. It says 5 people shot at New York's West Indian American Day Parade. Is the headlines if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, and I know I see why now. Well, I'm not gonna go to, but from our jurisdiction standpoint, there was a school shooting an hour east of Atlanta. 2 students were killed. I believe one was of our race, but that has been more so on the top of my timeline as opposed to what was going on in New York. Okay. All right, let's get through, keep it moving for our member share. Next member would be Sister Reveille in Duluth. Greetings, Sister Reveille.
Greetings, Brother John, and Race First again, everyone. I am just happy to be here. I had my little share about the topic. That's all I have today, but thank you.
All right, thank you. We appreciate you being here, and definitely make sure I'll send out the invitation for our Tuesday study group. Okay. So, and Dara Manifa, thank you. We got your comment in the chat. I believe this is last sister. That's not an officer. Sister Shan. Sister Shan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, I had my button on. I just want to tell everyone I enjoyed the presentation today, and race first. That's it for me. Thank you.
Race first. Thank you, Sister Shan. Long time supporter. Were there any other sisters, non-members, that we did not offer a chance to share? Okay. Thank you, brothers, for waiting patiently. First brother, we'll go to longtime supporter out of Brooklyn, New York, active member of the UNIA, member number 172, Dr. Shams. Greetings, Dr. Shams.
Race first.
Who's first?
Yes, pertaining to the UNIA versus the United States. The United States always will never recognize any other sovereignty other than its own. Just it just happens to be racist and selfish that way, and it's that way with all other countries throughout the world too. They don't recognize no other sovereignty other than their own. That's why I was trying to see if we could go in front of the United Nations to let our plight be known to the world. But there's more than one way of doing that. You know, I have several ways on my website, you know, and then the United Nations is located right here in New York. They may even carry our flag, the red, black, and green flag, because in some places you would see that our flag at least is recognized, even though the sovereignty laws behind it are not recognized and won't be recognized until we go to United Nations and take a stand in front of the world and let the world know who we are as a people. That's the number one thing we need to do, and we hopefully need to do that before next year even gets here. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen because we are a stubborn people. We don't listen too well, and we do not cooperate the way we should, which is one of the 5 things that held us back in the very beginning. Opposition from ourselves, you know. And I ask that you support my website also. It's located on the internet at Not Helpful USA Legislations People.brainsites.com. I'll put it in the chat along with my email and phone number. I'm working on getting another cell phone, so you have to bear with me for about 2 weeks if you want to call me, but you can send me email. My email is also in the chat. That's Shams and number 7 and number 7 saves @gmail.com. SHAMS, the number 7 and number 7 saves SAVES @gmail.com. Again, my website is Not Helpful USA Legislations People.brainsites.com. I'm sure if you go there, you may never want to watch TV again, because it's just that entertainment. I have a lot of Black programs on there. I have a lot of political current events on there, current event activities. And if Trump gets in and we're not before the United Nations, he's going to walk all over us just like anybody else. And we're going to go through all of what we say in Marcus Mosiah Garvey went through this evening. We're going to go through it all as a people once again, because we do not cooperate with one another and we are stubborn people. Peace and race first.
Race first, Dr. Shams. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, we got a couple more brothers, at least one. Next brother will bring in Chaplain Mitchell. Greetings, Chaplain Mitchell. Brother Maurice.
Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. Sorry, I'm driving. I don't have too much to say. I'm just tuning in. I hope everyone is doing well. Peace and blessings. And I'll go ahead and put it back on you.
Thank you, my brother. It looks like we got one more brother that did not get a chance to share. UNIA member 197, say 197. Brother Stephen, is that brother Biko?
Stephen Biko.
Hey, race first. Greetings, family.
Greetings. How you doing, brother Stephen?
I'm doing wonderful, President John, and greetings to everyone on the call. Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to those reflections and thinking to myself as well, it's 2024 now, and I think the goal has to be that we set something, in place as a mission or an objective that we all can work towards. And so it always troubles me when I hear that Marcus Garvey still needs to be pardoned by the federal government. And we don't use that, and this time in particular, very strategically as an organization, dealing with the sitting president, Joe Biden, who's not running for re-election, who's on his way out. And one thing that presidents do on their way out is they give out pardons.
Very true.
But those pardons have to be petitioned by. So I don't know who's working on this exoneration situation, but I think that would be, in my opinion, a great project that we could rally the people around and also help to reconnect them with the work of the UNIA. Because whether we realize it or not, a lot of our people have forgotten or have not really known about the Honorable Marcus Garvey and the work of the UNIA.
Yes,
so this is something that I would just put out there as a suggestion, maybe to look at. But it's an opportune time, and politically speaking, especially if we're going to get certain things done in the UN, as the brother spoke about, these are legitimate, actual things that has to happen in order for things to be recognized globally by the world. We just don't want to recognize ourselves as such. We want the world to recognize us as such. And the first thing I think would be the pardoning of the Honorable Marcus Garvey by the U.S. government as that first step that could then begin to move us towards even more justice in the future.
Understand.
Yes, thanks.
Understand. As I looked it up, when I typed in exoneration of Marcus Garvey, I thought there was it looks like there's more than one group or organization pushing for that. I thought there was one kind of leading it, but I'm having trouble finding that at this time. But just to promote to our members, listeners, please do your research on exoneration of Marcus Garvey. And we can discuss or think of ways in which we can potentially execute that within the UNIA if that's possible.
Well, yeah, but brother, I hope it would be possible. I think that should be an ongoing campaign that's being actively pursued and worked upon. And I'm becoming clear for myself, having worked in and among our people for several decades and seen and experienced a lot, that we're challenged with changing up the way that we do things in order to actually, achieve the ultimate goal. And that change sometimes is hard for us to wrap our minds around, only because we haven't tried it. And so a lot of times that's our biggest challenge. We have to see something of value and understand, in order for us to, as an organization and as a body and as a mission, to get more of our people to connect with UNIA, we have to put the UNIA back out there in the forefront. We have to and we use pardoning Marcus Garvey as such, because in pardoning him, the UNIA is pardoned as well. And that can open up a lot of doors for more and more education to get out to our people so they can be a part of this work, support it, know it, and pass it on to those coming behind them.
Yes, sir. I will bring that to our leadership and give you an update on the direction that they can provide.
Yes, sir. And I think for myself, I know I am behind on my dues, I think, for this year. But yeah, I'll definitely get caught up on that and do my best. I don't know how many are from Chicago are on the line tonight, but it's a lot going on in the city up here. A lot happening, and that's going to continue to happen just based on us allowing other governments to wreak havoc on our lives. And so our being a government has to become about actually having jurisdiction over geographic locations.
Yes.
Ultimately, that's where we've got to go. There is no change in this system, knowing that a system can only do what it's created to do. We've just got to develop a system of liberation that will only do what it is created to do. And that's what the ultimate goal of all this work, in my opinion, is to liberate ourselves from oppression in all forms. So give thanks. Race first.
Yes, sir. Race first. Thank you, Brother Biko. Stop sharing. Any other questions, comments, concerns that need to be brought to the body seeking an update for?
I just want to second that. That was great. Thank you. A system of liberation from oppression of all form. We have to develop our own system because this system is designed to do what it's doing and what it'll continue to do here in the US and on the African continent. Yes.
Yes, it is. That's, yeah, we're not going to get too deep into it, but Mr. Garvey talks about that in Course of African Philosophy, lesson titled Man. He tells us that man is wicked and we should expect such, but with that knowledge, we should not fear, we should understand. So, all right, with that, were there any other members that did not get a chance to share? Okay. Thank you, members. We will close out with the motto and the slogan. And again, officers, if we could, let's take 10, 15 minutes to address any concerns or any questions that we may have coming out of our executive meeting. So if everyone would, please come off mute and repeat after me. Put your black fist in the air. One God.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny.
Africa.
Africa.
For the Africans.
For the Africans.
Those at home.
Those at home.
And those abroad.
So what you want to do is get this and yeah, take that out and get it from the bottom.
Help us out, Dr. Shams. What we missing?
Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will.
Yes, sir. Up, you mighty race. Thank you, Dr. Shams.
You have to speak it into existence so it won't happen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're absolutely right, Dr. Shams. Thank you, everyone. If everyone could, please excuse yourself. We got to take care of some executive business. So I'll give everyone a couple minutes. Officers, take a little break. We'll get started at 7:30.